The story begins in a future that feels both familiar and astonishingly different from the world we know today. It was the year 2147, a time when humanity had reached far beyond the boundaries of the solar system, propelled by decades of scientific advancement and the unrelenting curiosity that had always defined human nature. Cities on Earth had grown taller and brighter, powered by clean energy and interconnected by systems that could manage everything from traffic to climate. Despite these advancements, humans remained fascinated by the stars. They had always looked up, wondering what, if anything, lay beyond their own small blue planet. Now, with spacecraft capable of traveling at speeds previously thought impossible, those questions were beginning to be answered. For years, scientists had been monitoring signals coming from deep space. Most were natural phenomena, pulses from distant stars, cosmic radiation or background noise from the universe's earliest moments. But one particular set of signals caught the attention of the brightest minds in the United Earth Space Agency, or USA. Unlike the random noise that came from distant galaxies, these signals had a pattern, a deliberate structure that suggested intelligence. The researchers initially doubted themselves. Could it really be a message from another civilization? The possibility was so monumental that many of them spent sleepless nights analyzing the data, double-checking and triple-checking their equipment. When the patterns persisted, it became clear that this was not a natural occurrence. Someone or something was reaching out. The signals were traced to a star system far beyond the reaches of familiar space. The planet from which they emanated was in a state of obvious distress. Scientists were able to decode fragments of the messages and realized, slowly and with growing awe, that the signals were a form of a distress call. They belonged to an alien species known as the Liari. From what could be interpreted, the Liari were intelligent, peaceful, and desperately in need of help. Their home world was deteriorating due to factors beyond their control, catastrophic environmental changes that threatened the very existence of their civilization. To human scientists, the Liari represented something profound, not just evidence of life beyond Earth, but the possibility of friendship and cooperation across the stars. The implications of receiving such a message were enormous. For decades, humanity had debated whether contact with extraterrestrial life would be a blessing or a curse. Philosophers, scientists, and politicians had all weighed in, some arguing that humans were not ready to face intelligent life beyond their planet, while others believed that the opportunity for mutual learning and exploration was too important to ignore. Now, faced with the reality of a civilization calling for help, those debates became urgent and concrete. The USA decided that a mission had to be launched. This was more than exploration. It was a chance to answer a plea for survival, to show that humanity could be a compassionate force in the galaxy. Planning the mission was a complex and painstaking process. The leaders of USA knew that first contact could not be taken lightly. Miscommunication, even a small mistake, could provoke hostility or, worse, result in the destruction of both species. They assembled a team of experts, carefully chosen not only for their technical skills but also for their ability to handle the psychological and diplomatic pressures of such a historic mission. Captain Alara Mendez was selected to lead the expedition. She was known for her calm decisiveness, strategic thinking, and deep empathy, a combination that made her ideal for a mission where every choice could have life or death consequences. Mendez had spent her life preparing for a moment like this, studying alien linguistics, interstellar navigation, and the unpredictable dynamics of first contact. The spacecraft that would carry them, the Horizon, was a marvel of human engineering. It was designed to traverse the vast distances of space safely, equipped with life support systems capable of sustaining the crew for years if necessary. It had advanced communication arrays to relay messages across unimaginable distances and defensive systems to protect against unforeseen dangers. But most importantly, it had tools for scientific observation and humanitarian aid. For the mission's primary goal was not warfare but assistance. Every element of the ship was chosen to reflect humanity's best intentions, signaling that the crew came in peace. The day of departure was filled with a mixture of anticipation, fear, and hope. Families and colleagues gathered to see the Horizon lift off, knowing that the journey ahead would be long, uncertain, and possibly dangerous. As the engines ignited and the ship ascended into the sky, it carried not just the crew, but the collective hopes of a species reaching out across the void. On board, the atmosphere was equally charged. Scientists reviewed the data once more. Engineers double-checked the systems, and Mendez gave her crew one last motivational speech, reminding them that what they were about to do could define the future of human civilization and possibly save an entire alien race. As the Horizon slipped into the silent darkness of space, the crew's focus shifted to the signals from the Liari. The transmissions were fragmented and in an alien structure, but patterns could be detected, repeating phrases that suggested urgency, fear, and hope. The Liari's messages described environmental collapse, shortages of resources, and a plea for immediate assistance. While the language was unlike anything humans had ever encountered, the underlying meaning was clear. Their world was dying, and without help, their civilization might not survive. For the crew, hearing this message was both heartbreaking and motivating. Every decision they made from this point on could mean the difference between survival and extinction for the Liari. While the USA leadership provided support from Earth, the responsibility ultimately rested with the Horizon's crew. They were aware that the universe was unpredictable. They knew that even with the best technology and training, they could encounter unforeseen challenges, hostile species, or natural hazards that might prevent them from reaching their destination. Yet, despite the risks, there was a sense of excitement and purpose that permeated the ship. For the first time, humanity was answering a call for help from another world, and the weight of that responsibility was both exhilarating and sobering throughout this phase of the mission. The human crew also reflected on the philosophical significance of their journey. What did it mean to reach out across the stars? Could humans genuinely offer help without imposing their own will or misunderstanding alien needs? Every crew member considered the delicate balance between intervention and respect, between action and observation. They understood that the Liari were not children in need of guidance. They were a fully formed civilization with their own culture, intelligence, and autonomy. The challenge was to provide aid in a way that honored that autonomy, a task far more complex than any engineering problem or interstellar maneuver. As the ship drew closer to the coordinates provided by the distress signal, the crew reviewed all available information about the Liari. Anthropologists studied the hints of culture embedded in the communication patterns, while engineers calculated potential environmental conditions on the planet. Medical specialists prepared for the possibility of encountering new forms of biology, and linguists worked to anticipate misunderstandings. Every angle was considered, every scenario simulated, because the margin for error was non-existent. The mission was unprecedented, and with no prior examples to guide them, the crew relied on preparation, intuition, and a shared trust that had been built over years of training. Despite the meticulous planning, there was an undercurrent of uncertainty that no amount of data could eliminate. Humanity had never before faced a situation where an entire species' survival depended on a single interstellar mission. The weight of that realization was felt by every crew member, quietly influencing their thoughts and actions. Yet, this fear was tempered by hope, the hope that human ingenuity, compassion, and courage could make a meaningful difference. The Liari's distress call was a lifeline, and the crew of the Horizon were determined to answer it, no matter the personal risk. In the final hours before entering the Liari system, the crew gathered together, not just as a team but as witnesses to history. They contemplated the enormity of what lay ahead, the possibility of first contact, the challenge of saving a civilization on the brink, and the unknown perils that might await them. The atmosphere aboard the ship was a mix of quiet focus and intense anticipation. As everyone silently acknowledged the significance of the moment, the Liari's message had set in motion a journey that was as much about humanity's own values and identity as it was about providing aid. Humanity had recognized a cry for help from across the stars, assembled the tools, knowledge, and courage needed to respond, and sent its bravest representatives to face whatever awaited them. The Horizon was now hurtling through the vast emptiness of space, carrying with it not only hope for the Liari but also a reflection of what it meant for humans to reach beyond themselves in the spirit of compassion and exploration. Every mile traveled brought them closer to the unknown, closer to the destiny that awaited them, and closer to a first encounter that could change the course of history forever. After months of preparation and anticipation, the crew of the Horizon finally embarked on the most ambitious journey humanity had ever undertaken. They had left behind the familiar landscapes of Earth, the bustling cities, the oceans, and the sky that had always been their constant companion, and entered the vast, silent expanse of interstellar space. The transition from the comforts of home to the cold, infinite darkness of the stars was jarring in ways that no simulation or training could fully prepare them for. The crew quickly realized that life aboard the spacecraft was as much about endurance and mental resilience as it was about technology and navigation. Every member had to adapt to the rhythm of a ship that would carry them for months, possibly years, toward an unknown world. Captain Ilara Mendez, as the leader of the mission, took her responsibilities with extraordinary seriousness. She knew that the success of the mission did not rest solely on technical skill. It also depended on morale, cohesion, and the ability to make critical decisions under pressure. She spent hours with her crew, discussing every possible scenario they might face upon reaching the Liari system. Would the aliens be cooperative? Could their environment support human life temporarily? Were there hidden dangers they could not predict? These questions were at the forefront of every crew member's mind, and Mendez encouraged open dialogue to ensure that fear did not grow into panic. The Horizon's journey was not a simple, straight line through space. The ship navigated complex gravitational fields, asteroid belts, and the unpredictable turbulence of cosmic phenomena. Each maneuver was calculated with precision, yet even with advanced artificial intelligence assisting them, the crew understood that space was inherently unpredictable. A single error could mean disaster, and the consequences of failure extended far beyond their own lives. They were traveling not just for themselves, but for an entire alien civilization counting on them, and for humanity, whose reputation as a responsible species might hang in the balance. Despite the dangers and the monotony of long-distance travel, the crew found ways to maintain their mental sharpness and emotional balance. Daily routines were meticulously planned, balancing work, rest, exercise, and recreational time. Exercise was not just for fitness, it was essential for circulation and mental stability in the zero-gravity environment of the ship. Team members held regular briefings, analyzing data from the sensors, refining their understanding of the Liari signals, and rehearsing potential first contact scenarios. They treated the mission as a living, breathing process, understanding that flexibility and quick thinking could mean the difference between success and failure. Communication with Earth was another critical aspect of the journey. The vast distances meant that messages sent to and from the planet took days, sometimes weeks, to arrive. This delay forced the crew to act independently and make decisions without immediate guidance from mission control. For some, this was liberating. For others, it was terrifying. The responsibility of choosing the right course of action without instant confirmation weighed heavily on their shoulders. The crew relied on their training, their collective experience, and their trust in one another to navigate this unique challenge. As the horizon drew closer to the coordinates of the distress call, the crew began to analyze the Liari's environment more deeply. Initial scans suggested a planet that was visually beautiful yet ecologically fragile. Vast oceans sparkled under alien suns, mountains stretched high into the atmosphere, and strange, luminous flora decorated the landscapes. Yet the scans also revealed signs of extreme environmental stress, massive storms that seemed unnatural, areas of the surface devastated by erosion or chemical contamination, and faint traces of abandoned settlements that hinted at a civilization struggling to survive. The data painted a picture of a planet at a critical tipping point, and it was clear that any delay in intervention could have irreversible consequences. The crew spent considerable time studying the Liari themselves through the signals they had sent. Although they had only fragments of the language and culture, patterns began to emerge. Though Liari appeared to be highly intelligent, with a society that emphasized cooperation and mutual care, there were no indications of warfare or aggression, and the structure of their messages suggested problem-solving and logical thinking rather than panic or chaos. This gave the human crew a sense of cautious optimism. If the Liari could survive the environmental challenges and receive aid in time, there was hope for their civilization. However, the optimism was tempered by a growing awareness of potential dangers. The Liari's planet was in a relatively isolated part of the galaxy, far from other civilizations, or so it seemed. The crew could not know what other forces might be operating in the system. The universe was vast and unpredictable, and every signal could conceal a hidden threat. Captain Mendez reminded her team constantly that they had to be vigilant and prepared for any scenario. Complacency could be deadly. The excitement of first contact could not overshadow the necessity of caution. Interpersonal dynamics among the crew became increasingly important. Long journeys in confined spaces can amplify both camaraderie and conflict. The Horizon's crew had trained extensively in conflict resolution, teamwork, and psychological resilience. But even so, tensions occasionally surfaced. Small disagreements about procedure, fatigue, and differing interpretations of the Liari data caused friction. Captain Mendez managed these moments with skill, ensuring that disagreements were addressed constructively and never allowed to escalate into dangerous divisions. The ability to maintain trust, communication, and mutual respect became as essential as any technical skill aboard the ship. The early situation aboard the Horizon also involved grappling with the unknown aspects of the Liari's distress. While the messages indicated environmental collapse, the exact nature and scope of the crisis remained unclear. Were the Liari facing natural disasters, disease, or some technological catastrophe? The crew had to prepare for every possibility. Scientists simulated scenarios ranging from widespread planetary contamination to species-specific health crises. Engineers reviewed the spacecraft's capabilities to deliver aid under extreme conditions. Medical specialists studied potential biological risks, including the possibility of alien pathogens. Every detail mattered, and the crew worked tirelessly to cover all bases. Amidst the work and preparation, moments of awe and wonder punctuated the journey. Observing alien star systems, nebulae, and distant planets reminded the crew why they had embarked on this mission in the first place. These glimpses of cosmic beauty provided both a sense of perspective and renewed motivation. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and the realization that intelligent life existed elsewhere, calling for help, was both humbling and inspiring. These reflections reinforced their commitment to the mission and strengthened their resolve to succeed. The early situation also highlighted the limitations of human technology and understanding. Even with the advanced capabilities of the Horizon, the crew could only interpret so much from the signals. They were reading the messages of a civilization shaped by completely different biology, culture, and environmental pressures. Misinterpretation was a constant risk. Captain Mendez emphasized patience, careful analysis, and respect for the Liari's autonomy. The crew understood that even the most well-intentioned intervention could cause harm if applied without understanding. This awareness shaped every decision, every preparation, and every plan. As the horizon approached the Lyari system, the crew began to transition from preparation to anticipation. The unknown planet grew larger in their senses, its landscapes slowly becoming distinguishable from the darkness of space. The team reviewed all their plans for first contact communication protocols, safety procedures, and potential rescue strategies. They rehearsed possible outcomes, including hostile responses, environmental hazards, and technical failures. Every simulation was a reminder that while they were highly trained and well prepared, the universe was inherently unpredictable. Flexibility, creativity, and calm under pressure would be their greatest assets. The crew also reflected on the philosophical and moral dimensions of their mission. They were not explorers merely seeking knowledge or fame, they were responders to a plea for survival. The weight of that responsibility was immense. They considered questions of ethics, cultural sensitivity, and the limits of human intervention. How could they help without dominating? How could they save without causing unintended consequences? These questions were not academic. They were practical considerations that influenced every choice on the journey. The early situation set the tone for the challenges that lay ahead. The crew of the Horizon understood that they were entering uncharted territory not just physically, but morally and emotionally. The Lyari's distress call had opened a door to a world of unknowns, filled with danger, possibility, and the hope of connection across species. Every hour spent in transit brought them closer to a moment that could define both human and Lyari history. Their journey was no longer just a mission. It had become a profound test of humanity's courage, ingenuity, and compassion. The early situation aboard the Horizon involved preparation, anticipation, and the delicate balance of excitement and caution. The crew had adapted to the realities of long-distance space travel, analyzed the Lyari's distress signals, and considered every possible scenario for first contact. They had formed a cohesive, resilient team, capable of responding to both expected and unforeseen challenges. As they drew closer to the alien planet, they carried with them not just equipment and knowledge, but hope, responsibility, and the determination to answer a call for help that traveled light years across the galaxy. As the Horizon approached the Lyari system, the atmosphere aboard the ship shifted. The long months of preparation and steady anticipation were replaced by a tension that could be felt in every corner of the vessel. Sensors picked up anomalies in the Lyari system that no one had expected. At first, the readings were subtle: faint energy signals, unusual movement patterns on the planet's surface, and irregular communication bursts that did not match the patterns of the Lyari's distress signals. The crew's initial excitement and hope began to be tempered by unease. Something was not as it seemed. Captain Alara Mendez convened an emergency briefing. The crew gathered around the holographic display, showing a live scan of the Lyari planet and the surrounding space. The planet's surface, once thought to be only suffering from environmental degradation, now revealed more sinister signs. Massive metallic structures had begun to appear near the major population centers. Satellites and probes detected heavily armored vehicles and energy shields, technology that the Lyari did not possess. The logical conclusion was unavoidable. The Lyari were no longer alone. Someone or something had arrived before them. The signals indicated a presence that was advanced, aggressive, and fully capable of responding to intruders with lethal force. The implications were chilling. The Horizon had been sent to assist a vulnerable civilization, not to confront a powerful force. Yet now, the crew faced the reality that their mission could escalate from a humanitarian rescue to a tactical operation. They had trained for danger, of course, but nothing in simulations could fully prepare them for encountering an unknown species intent on domination. The energy signatures suggested weapons of unimaginable power and movement patterns that hinted at a calculated strategy rather than random exploration. It became clear that the distress signal the Lyari had sent out had been intercepted not by friendly civilizations, but by a race known to human intelligence. Archives as the Deathworlders. The Deathworlders were notorious throughout the galaxy. Their reputation was one of fear and destruction. Stories of planets consumed, civilizations eradicated, and entire ecosystems rewritten for their needs filled historical records. They were not interested in negotiation or coexistence. They were conquerors, taking what they wanted without question and leaving devastation in their wake. The very thought of encountering them brought a sobering reality to the crew of the Horizon. What had begun as a mission of hope had suddenly become a mission of survival. As the crew studied the Deathworlder presence, their instruments picked up movements of fleets and patrols around the Lyari cities. The structures on the planet's surface were growing rapidly, like tumors spreading across a body. The Horizon's analysts confirmed that these were industrial complexes, capable of extracting resources and possibly harvesting life forms. But Lyari civilization, with its peaceful and cooperative nature, had no chance of defending itself against such overwhelming force. The urgency of the distress signal was magnified tenfold. Not only was the planet deteriorating environmentally, but it was now under active threat of occupation and destruction. Captain Mendez faced the first of many critical decisions. The initial plan had been to land in a designated safe zone and establish direct communication with the Liari to assess their immediate needs. Now, even approaching the planet carried significant risk. Every movement could be detected by the Deathworlders, and their response could be catastrophic. The captain and her officers debated alternatives. Should they attempt to communicate from orbit? Should they wait and gather more intelligence? Should they prepare for a direct confrontation despite knowing that their mission was primarily humanitarian? Every option carried enormous risk, and the wrong choice could mean the end of both the crew and any chance of aiding the Liari. Meanwhile, tensions aboard the Horizon began to rise. Crew members who had trained together for years now faced the psychological strain of imminent danger. Anxiety, fear, and uncertainty mixed with determination and resolve. Small disagreements about procedure and risk assessment occasionally flared into arguments. Captain Mendez worked tirelessly to maintain cohesion, reminding her team of their training, their purpose, and the importance of staying calm under pressure. She emphasized that panic could be as dangerous as any external threat. Every member of the crew had to remain disciplined, focused, and prepared to act decisively when the moment came. The crew's scientists and strategists began a detailed analysis of the Deathworlder technology. Their scans revealed energy shields that could withstand the Horizon's most advanced weapons, fleets of highly maneuverable ships, and terraforming machines capable of reshaping entire ecosystems. The technological disparity was staggering. Humans had always assumed that first contact with intelligent life might be friendly or neutral. They had prepared for cautious negotiation or environmental support. Now, the reality was starkly different. They were confronting a civilization designed for conquest and destruction. The challenge was no longer simply to aid the Liari, it was to survive long enough to attempt aid. Despite these challenges, the crew of the Horizon refused to succumb to despair. They recognized that retreat was not an option. The Liari's survival depended on them. Their mission had transformed from a straightforward humanitarian effort into a delicate balance of reconnaissance, strategy, and diplomacy. They needed to gather intelligence, avoid detection, and find a way to communicate with the Liari without provoking the Deathworlders. This required ingenuity, creativity, and the willingness to take calculated risks. The rising conflict also revealed the unpredictable nature of the Liari themselves. Even in fragments of their communications, the humans could sense fear, resilience, and ingenuity. The Liari had not given up. They were attempting to protect themselves, perhaps hoping that someone would arrive in time to help. The crew of the Horizon realized that their success depended not only on navigating external dangers but also on understanding the Liari's mindset and adapting their approach to complement the aliens' efforts. Miscommunication could lead to disaster, but careful coordination offered a chance of success, however slim. In the following days, the Horizon's crew executed careful reconnaissance maneuvers. They observed the planet from multiple angles, mapping Deathworlder movements, monitoring energy emissions, and predicting potential zones of engagement. Each observation revealed more about the hostile force, but also about the planet's vulnerabilities. The Deathworlders' technology was impressive but required massive energy consumption and time to maintain. Their supply lines were extended and exposed, and they had not anticipated human interference. These insights gave the crew a glimmer of hope that, with clever tactics, they might create opportunities to aid the Liari, despite the overwhelming odds. The tension reached new heights when the Deathworlders' sensors briefly detected the Horizon's presence. An alarm sounded throughout the ship, and the crew acted with the precision and discipline honed over years of training. Stealth maneuvers, energy-dampening protocols, and evasive maneuvers were executed flawlessly, avoiding detection by a margin of mere meters. This brush with danger reinforced the reality of the situation. The crew was now actively operating in enemy-controlled space. Their actions had consequences, and a single mistake could result in catastrophe. Every decision had to be deliberate, calculated, and executed with absolute care. As they navigated these challenges, interpersonal dynamics aboard the ship intensified. Some crew members struggled with fear, while others thrived under pressure. Captain Mendez worked to balance these dynamics, assigning tasks according to strengths and providing support where anxiety threatened performance. The psychological toll of the mission became increasingly apparent, but so did the determination and resilience of the crew. They were learning not only about the enemy outside but also about themselves, the limits of courage, patience, and human ingenuity. Communication with Earth became increasingly strained. Delays and the sensitive nature of intelligence meant that the crew had to make crucial decisions without waiting for guidance from mission control. This independence was both empowering and terrifying. Every maneuver, every strategy, and every attempt to approach the Liari had to be evaluated against a backdrop of incomplete information. The stakes had escalated from planetary rescue to tactical survival, and the crew's ability to adapt quickly was tested at every turn. While the Horizon's crew had trained for unknown variables, the Deathworlders represented an unpredictable and merciless opponent. Their approach to strategy was methodical yet brutal, and their priorities did not include negotiation, compromise, or ethics. For the humans, this meant that every action had to account for potential retaliation and the possibility of escalation. The universe they had prepared for, one of discovery, dialogue, and mutual understanding, was replaced by a reality of survival and high-stakes, tactical maneuvering. Despite these dangers, moments of courage and ingenuity shone brightly. Crew members devised stealth technologies, communication protocols, and diversionary strategies that allowed them to observe the planet without immediate threat. Engineers modified existing systems to enhance detection capabilities, while strategists predicted the enemy's potential responses with remarkable accuracy. These successes, though small in comparison to the overall threat, strengthened the crew's morale and reinforced the belief that, even against overwhelming odds, they could make a meaningful impact. The Liari themselves, in subtle ways, became a source of guidance. Through fragments of signals, the humans began to understand patterns of survival, safe zones, and resource management strategies employed by the alien civilization. By combining this knowledge with their own technology and training, the Horizon's crew started to develop plans not just to observe but to intervene in a way that could maximize survival for both the Liari and themselves. The rising conflict was not merely external, it was a test of intelligence, creativity, and ethical decision-making. The Horizon's crew came to understand that the journey to aid the Liari was more complex than anyone could have imagined. What had started as a mission of hope was now a high-stakes confrontation with a powerful and relentless force. The challenges were immense, but so was the resolve of the crew. They had to balance caution with action, observation with intervention, and strategy with empathy. Every decision carried weight, and the outcome remained uncertain. Yet, despite the danger, the crew pressed forward, determined to fulfill their mission, protect the innocent, and navigate the escalating conflict with courage and intelligence. HFY Story reaches the critical point where the stakes are raised. Danger is immediate, and the crew must act with both bravery and careful planning. The rising conflict sets the stage for the inevitable breaking point, where choices will become even more urgent and consequences even more profound. The Horizon's crew had entered a world where hope, strategy, and survival were intertwined, and the coming moments would test every skill, value, and strength they possessed. The tension that had been building for weeks aboard the Horizon finally erupted into its most critical and dangerous moment, the breaking point of the mission. Up until this stage, the crew had been carefully observing, analyzing, and maneuvering around the Deathworlders' presence, attempting to find a path that would allow them to help the Liari without triggering open conflict. Every day brought new data, new challenges, and the increasing realization that the situation was far more complex than anticipated. Yet, despite their preparation and skill, the reality of confronting an aggressive, intelligent, and technologically superior enemy was unavoidable. The breaking point arrived not suddenly, but as a series of cascading events that left the crew with no choice but to act decisively. It began with a miscalculation, or rather, the unpredictable nature of the Deathworlders' strategy. The Horizon had been using stealth protocols to approach the Liari planet and gather intelligence from orbit. The ship remained cloaked, its emissions dampened, its sensors tuned to avoid detection. For weeks, this careful dance had allowed the crew to map enemy movements and understand patterns of activity. But the Deathworlders were not careless. They had detected a subtle disturbance in their energy fields, a minute anomaly that indicated a foreign presence. It was not yet a direct threat, but it was enough to put the humans on high alert. Captain Alara Mendez immediately convened a crew for a tactical assessment, understanding that any error could trigger hostile engagement. The first major challenge arose from the Liari themselves. Signals intercepted by the Horizon indicated that the Liari were attempting to move critical resources and civilians to safer areas of the planet. Their efforts, though cautious and calculated, were visible to the Death. The crew realized that, unintentionally, their proximity and observation had accelerated the Deathworlders' defensive measures. Civilian areas that had seemed relatively secure were suddenly targeted for monitoring and fortification. The Liari, unaware of the Horizon's presence, were placing themselves at risk while trying to survive. The humans faced a moral dilemma: remain hidden and risk the Liari's exposure, or intervene directly and risk open conflict with the Deathworlders. As the hours passed, the first engagement occurred. A Deathworlder patrol, likely sent to investigate the anomaly detected by the Horizon, approached the human ship's position. For the crew, it was the first tangible sign that they were no longer merely observers. Sensors detected the patrol's energy signature, advanced weaponry, and rapid movement. There was no question of negotiation. The Deathworlders had no interest in dialogue. Captain Mendez ordered evasive maneuvers, attempting to slip past the patrol using every stealth system available. The ship shuddered under sudden gravitational shifts, energy fluctuations, and the sheer intensity of the maneuver. Every crew member worked in synchrony, their training tested to the extreme. Despite their efforts, the patrol came dangerously close, forcing the crew to make split-second decisions that could mean life or death. The breaking point intensified when a critical system on the Horizon failed. The ship's cloaking array, their primary defense against detection, experienced an unexpected power surge. For a brief but terrifying moment, the horizon became fully visible to the Deathworlder patrol. Alarms blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing as the crew scrambled to restore functionality. Engineers raced against time, fingers moving over consoles with precision, recalibrating systems and rerouting power. The patrol, sensing a possible threat, adjusted its course toward the horizon, ready to engage. Captain Mendez had seconds to make a choice: attempt a desperate escape through an uncharted trajectory, or prepare for direct confrontation. Every option carried immense risk at the same time. The Liari situation worsened. The alien signals indicated that their civilians were trapped in areas increasingly under Deathworlder control. The environmental collapse had already placed strain on their resources, and now the additional threat of an occupying force magnified the urgency. Captain Mendez and her officers debated the best course of action. Retreat was not an option. Leaving the Liari to face the Deathworlders alone would be morally unacceptable and catastrophic for the humans' mission. The crew had to act decisively, balancing risk, strategy, and the urgency of saving as many lives as possible in the critical moments that followed. The crew initiated a diversionary tactic. Using the Horizon's remaining stealth and maneuvering capabilities, they created the illusion of multiple ships approaching from different vectors. Energy pulses were emitted selectively to simulate movement, forcing the Deathworlder patrol to divide its attention. The crew hoped that this deception would buy enough time to move into a position where they could assist the Liari, or at least relay critical intelligence. The tension aboard the ship was almost unbearable. Every heartbeat, every command, carried the weight of survival for both humans and aliens. The breaking point reached its peak when the Deathworlders responded aggressively. Their patrols converged on the Horizon's location, launching targeted energy pulses and using detection arrays far more advanced than the humans had anticipated. Shields flared under concentrated fire, systems overloaded, and the ship rocked violently. Crew members were thrown against consoles and walls as gravity stabilizers fought to maintain balance. The alarm systems screamed warnings, and the ship's AI issued constant status updates on critical system failures. Captain Mendez remained calm, issuing rapid-fire commands, coordinating evasive maneuvers, and managing damage control teams. Her leadership became the anchor that held the crew together amid chaos. Simultaneously, the human crew faced an internal conflict: the need to act decisively against the Deathworlders versus the principle of non. The mission was humanitarian at its core, yet the situation demanded a tactical response. Scientists, engineers, and strategists had to reconcile these conflicting priorities. Weapons systems were not fully armed for offensive action, but the threat of the Deathworlders left no alternative. Every defensive measure taken had to be precise, measured, and minimally destructive to avoid escalating the conflict further while still ensuring survival. During this high-stakes engagement, the Liari signals provided a glimmer of hope, although the humans had not yet made direct contact. Fragments of communication indicated that the Liari were attempting their own countermeasures, evacuating vulnerable populations, moving essential resources, and setting up rudimentary defenses. The humans realized that collaboration, even indirect, was possible. By relaying information on Deathworlder positions and potential safe zones, the crew could influence the Liari's survival without direct confrontation. This insight reinforced the importance of adaptability and quick thinking under extreme pressure. As the encounter escalated, damage to the Horizon became critical. Systems vital for life support, propulsion, and communication were compromised. Crew members worked in teams, repairing and stabilizing systems while simultaneously maintaining vigilance against the approaching Deathworld. Engineers crawled through maintenance tunnels, patching power conduits and rerouting energy to essential functions. Medical staff prepared for potential injuries. Every second counted, and the crew's coordination and discipline were tested like never before. The breaking point was not only a battle of technology and tactics, it was also a battle of endurance and psychology. Fear, fatigue, and stress threatened to overwhelm the crew, yet each member drew on training, camaraderie, and sheer determination to persevere. The ship became a crucible, forcing individuals to confront their limits, overcome panic, and act with clarity despite chaos. Captain Mendez's leadership was pivotal, her calm decisiveness inspiring confidence and ensuring that every action was purposeful. Without this cohesion, the breaking point could have become a disaster, ending the mission and potentially costing lives. Recognizing that remaining passive would result in the Liari's likely capture, they initiated a calculated offensive maneuver, not to destroy the Death, which was impossible, but to create an opening for evacuation and intelligence gathering. Using the ship's advanced stealth technology, energy pulses, and diversion tactics, they drew Deathworlder forces away from critical Liari zones, temporarily disrupting enemy surveillance and allowing civilians to move to safer areas. This maneuver required precision, timing, and courage. It was a high-risk decision, but the crew understood that hesitation could mean total failure. The aftermath of this maneuver left the Horizon severely damaged. Hull integrity was compromised, power reserves were critically low, and vital systems were functioning at minimal capacity. Crew members were exhausted, bruised, and mentally strained. Yet, amidst the damage and fatigue, there was a sense of accomplishment. They had survived the immediate threat, protected Liari civilians to some extent, and gained valuable intelligence on the Deathworlders' capabilities. The breaking point had tested every aspect of their preparation: technical skill, strategic thinking, moral judgment, and emotional resilience, and the crew had endured. The universe is unpredictable, and the cost of intervention can be immense. Even with advanced technology and careful planning, the humans had faced a threat that exceeded their expectations. Survival required adaptability, ingenuity, and the willingness to act decisively under extreme pressure. The breaking point also reinforced the moral dimensions of their mission. Saving lives sometimes demanded risks, courage, and decisions that would weigh heavily on the conscience. Captain Mendez and her crew now understood that the coming phases of the mission would require not only skill and strategy but also resilience, empathy, and unwavering commitment. The Horizon's crew faced their most immediate danger yet, experienced the consequences of proximity to a hostile force, and learned the limits and possibilities of their capabilities. It was a crucible of decision-making, courage, and teamwork, setting the stage for resolution and the possibility of successfully aiding the Liari. Despite overwhelming odds, the breaking point was not just a physical challenge, it was a test of human resolve, intelligence, and moral judgment, one that would shape the remainder of their mission and define the story of this unprecedented first contact. After the harrowing events of the breaking point, the crew of the Horizon faced a monumental task of turning survival into success. The immediate threat of the Deathworlders had passed for the moment, but the mission was far from over. The Liari civilization was still in danger, and the humans had to act decisively to provide aid, gather intelligence, and secure the possibility of long-term survival for those they had come to save. The resolution phase of the mission began as a combination of calculated risk, creative strategy, and careful cooperation between humans and the Liar. Every decision now mattered more than ever, because mistakes could undo everything they had fought to accomplish. Captain Alara Mendez gathered the crew for an extensive debriefing and planning session. They had learned a great deal during the breaking point: the Deathworlders' technology, patrol patterns, energy shields, and weaknesses in their operations. Using this intelligence, the crew devised a daring plan to achieve their mission objectives. They could not hope to confront the Deathworlders directly; they were far too powerful, but they could use stealth, diversion, and clever coordination to save as many Liari civilians and critical resources as possible. The plan required precision, timing, and trust, because failure at this stage could mean the loss of everything. The first step of the resolution plan was to communicate more effectively with the Liari the humans had been observing from orbit, piecing together fragments of language and cultural patterns. Now, Captain Mendez authorized the use of encoded signals to reach the Liari, carefully designed to be undetectable by the Deathworlders. The messages provided guidance on evacuation routes, safe zones, and resource allocation. They also reassured the Liari that help had arrived and that the humans were committed to assisting them. The Liari responded cautiously, indicating their readiness to follow instructions and cooperate where possible. This communication established a fragile but vital alliance between humans and the Liar, one that would prove essential in the days to come. Next, the Horizon's crew focused on creating diversions to allow Liari civilians to escape critical areas, using a combination of stealth technology, energy pulses, and strategically timed maneuvers. They simulated the presence of multiple ships approaching from different directions. The Deathworlders, unable to determine the exact number of intruders or their locations, diverted resources to monitor and investigate these false threats. This clever tactic created windows of opportunity for the Liari to move people, supplies, and essential equipment away from danger zones. The process was painstakingly slow, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment, but it was the most effective method available given the humans' limited resources and the overwhelming enemy presence. Meanwhile, on board the Horizon, engineers and technicians worked tirelessly to maintain ship functionality. The damage sustained during the breaking point had compromised vital systems, including propulsion, energy distribution, and shield integrity. Crew members rotated shifts around the clock, performing repairs in hazardous conditions. Sparks flew, alarms sounded, and sections of the ship became unbearably hot, but the human determination never faltered. Each repair brought the ship closer to operational capability, allowing the crew to implement their resolution plan more effectively. The engineers' ingenuity was particularly critical. They modified systems to allow faster energy allocation, improved stealth capabilities, and enhanced communication range. These improvements, though risky, gave the crew a tactical advantage that would be crucial in the unfolding operation. As the humans coordinated the evacuation, they observed Liari behavior closely. The aliens demonstrated remarkable resilience and intelligence. They had developed rudimentary defensive measures, including barricades, warning systems, and resource conservation strategies. By combining these efforts with the humans' technological support, The team created a coordinated approach that maximized efficiency and minimized risk. The Liari's willingness to cooperate, despite fear and uncertainty, was both inspiring and vital. It reminded the humans why they had undertaken the mission in the first place, to aid a civilization in need, even when the odds were overwhelming. The most critical phase of the resolution involved directly infiltrating Deathworlder-controlled zones to rescue those who could not escape on their own. Captain Mendez personally oversaw the selection of a specialized team for this high-risk operation. The team consisted of engineers, navigators, and security personnel who were not only highly skilled but also psychologically resilient. They would use the ship's remaining stealth capabilities to approach heavily guarded areas, extract Liari civilians and critical resources, and return safely. The plan required exact timing, precise navigation, and flawless execution. One misstep could trigger a Deathworlder response, endangering both the humans and the Liari. As the infiltration began, tension on the horizon was palpable. Every crew member monitored the operation closely, providing support, tracking enemy movements, and adjusting strategies in real time. The infiltrating team moved with silent efficiency, avoiding patrols and security systems. Sensors relayed live data back to the ship, allowing the crew to anticipate potential dangers and redirect resources. The success of this operation depended on seamless coordination and the ability to respond to the unexpected, and every member of the crew understood the gravity of their responsibility. The infiltration succeeded beyond expectations. The team managed to reach several groups of Liari civilians trapped in vulnerable areas and guide them to temporary safe zones. Essential resources including food, water, and medical supplies were also secured and relocated to protect them from Deathworlder interference. While the humans could not save everyone, many areas were already under complete enemy control. They were able to rescue a significant portion of the population and preserve critical infrastructure for the Liari's long-term survival. The success of this phase marked the turning point of the mission, demonstrating that even against overwhelming odds, careful planning, courage, and cooperation could achieve meaningful results. Throughout the resolution, the crew also focused on intelligence gathering. Every movement of the Deathworlders, every signal emission, and every patrol route was meticulously recorded and analyzed. This information would be invaluable not only for immediate operational success but also for informing Earth and other potential allies about the Deathworlder threat. That humans realized that while they had limited power to confront the Deathworlders directly, knowledge could be a form of leverage. By documenting enemy behavior and capabilities, they were equipping future missions and, potentially, the Liari themselves with the tools to survive and resist. Further aggression, morale aboard the horizon improved as the resolution phase progressed. The crew could see the tangible results of their efforts. Liari civilians moving safely, critical resources secured, and enemy forces temporarily distracted. Even under extreme pressure, human ingenuity, coordination, and perseverance had achieved outcomes that seemed improbable at the outset. Crew members took pride in their ability to turn a seemingly hopeless situation into a partial victory. Yet, this pride was tempered by the recognition that the battle was not over and that long-term success required continued vigilance and adaptability. The resolution also highlighted the importance of ethical decision-making. In high-stakes situations, Captain Mendez and her officers constantly balanced the immediate need to save lives with the potential consequences of their actions. Every diversion, every infiltration, and every decision to engage or avoid the enemy carried moral weight. The crew's adherence to principles of non-aggression, respect for alien autonomy, and minimization of harm distinguished their approach from the Deathworlders' merciless strategy. This ethical commitment, even under extreme duress, became a defining feature of the mission and reinforced the broader purpose of their journey. The humans had accomplished several critical objectives. They had rescued numerous Liari civilians, preserved essential resources, gained valuable intelligence on the Death, and established a working communication and coordination system with the Liari. While the mission had not completely eradicated the threat or restored the planet to safety, it had achieved the maximum possible success given the circumstances. The crew had transformed a dire situation into a carefully managed operation with meaningful outcomes. In addition to these practical successes, the resolution phase reinforced the importance of teamwork and leadership. Captain Mendez's guidance, the engineer's ingenuity, the strategist's foresight, and the cooperation of the Liari all contributed to a multifaceted approach that balanced risk, efficiency, and compassion. The breaking point had tested the crew individually and collectively, but the resolution demonstrated their capacity to convert challenge into accomplishment. Every member played a vital role, and the synergy of their efforts was the key to success. As the immediate dangers began to subside, the crew turned their attention to planning the next steps. They understood that the Deathworlders would not remain idle indefinitely, and that the Liari civilization, while partially rescued, remained vulnerable. Contingency plans were drafted for continued support, potential evacuation, and the establishment of communication channels for future coordination. The resolution phase thus bridged the gap between immediate crisis management and long-term strategy, emphasizing the interconnectedness of survival, planning, and adaptation. Ultimately, the resolution of the mission was not a complete triumph, but a demonstration of human resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage. The crew of the Horizon had faced overwhelming odds, navigated life-threatening danger, and achieved meaningful results in collaboration with the Liari. They had learned valuable lessons about strategy, communication, ethics, and the unpredictable nature of interstellar operations. The resolution was a testament to the potential of cooperation, creativity, and careful planning in overcoming challenges that, at first glance, seemed insurmountable. That the immediate crisis has been managed, meaningful victories have been achieved, and a foundation has been laid for the Liari's continued survival and recovery. The resolution phase illustrates that even in the face of overwhelming danger, thoughtful action, collaboration, and courage can create outcomes that honor the mission's purpose and provide hope for the future. The crew's efforts have transformed the trajectory of the Liari civilization and demonstrated the potential for humanity to act responsibly and effectively in the vast, unpredictable expanse of space. The days following the resolution of the mission were unlike anything the crew of the Horizon had experienced before. The pressure of immediate danger had eased, the chaos of constant alarms had faded, and the overwhelming tension that once filled every corner of the ship slowly dissolved into quiet exhaustion. The humans had survived their encounter with the death. The Liari had been rescued, at least partially, and a fragile form of hope now existed where only fear had lived before. Still, the aftermath of everything they had endured brought a wave of emotions, questions, and reflections that none of them could ignore. The story was far from over. It had simply changed from action to contemplation. Captain Alara Mendes walked through the ship slowly on the first morning after the crisis. She moved past crew members who were finally resting, some sleeping at their stations, others sitting in silence, staring into the dim lights of the ship. They all carried the physical and emotional marks of what they had survived. Many had bruises from being thrown around during the battle, burns from emergency repairs, and deep fatigue etched into their eyes. Yet beneath the exhaustion, Mendes saw something stronger, a quiet pride and a sense of unity that only such shared struggle could forge. Alara paused at the observation deck, gazing at the Liari planet below. The world looked peaceful from orbit, its swirling colors and shifting clouds masking the suffering that had taken place on its surface. But she knew better. She had witnessed the desperation of the Liari, the destruction of their land, and the merciless behavior of the Deathworlders. She knew the planet would never be the same again. That humans had helped prevent total devastation, but scars, emotional, physical, and environmental, would remain. As she stood there, the weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders once more. She asked herself if she had done enough. Had she made the right decisions? She replayed every moment of the mission in her mind, every command she gave, every risk she took, every consequence that followed. There were no perfect choices, only the best options possible at the time. She wondered if future historians would understand that, or if they would judge her decisions without knowing the impossible circumstances she faced. Still, despite her doubts, she felt a quiet certainty growing within her. Humanity had done something meaningful here. They had acted with compassion, courage, and intelligence. They had not turned away from suffering. They had chosen to help. Elsewhere on the ship, crew members were also processing their experiences. Some sat together in small groups, sharing stories of near failures, small victories, and the fear they tried so hard to hide. Others preferred silence, thinking about what they had witnessed and how it had changed them. Many were shaken by the Deathworlders' ruthlessness. Seeing such an advanced species act with such cruelty had deeply disturbed them. It was a reminder that intelligence did not guarantee morality, and power did not guarantee responsibility. There was one place on the ship where emotions ran especially deep: the medical bay. Rows of beds were filled with injured crew members and Liari civilians rescued during the mission. Human doctors and medics moved from bed to bed, checking vitals, adjusting healing pads, and offering gentle reassurance. The Liari, though frightened and disoriented, responded to the humans' care with gratitude. Their soft clicks and shimmering gestures conveyed emotions even without full language translation. Their eyes, large, reflective, filled with intelligent sadness, told the humans everything they needed to know. They were safe, and they were thankful. For the medics, the aftermath brought a sense of purpose mixed with sorrow. They treated burns from Deathworlder weapons, dehydration from environmental collapse, and trauma from fear and loss. Each injured Liari reminded them of the importance of their mission. Many of the medics had joined the space program hoping to explore new worlds, but they now realized that exploration was not always gentle or peaceful. Sometimes it meant confronting suffering and making hard decisions to protect others. And they had done that. The engineers, who had spent days working non-stop to keep the ship functional, finally had a moment to breathe. They walked through the maintenance corridors, inspecting the damage with clearer minds now that the immediate danger was gone. Burned wires, cracked panels, melted circuits. Each piece of damage told a story of how close the Horizon had come to destruction. of the engineers felt a mix of pride and disbelief. Their ability to improvise under pressure had saved the ship more than once. They had pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, crawling through narrow tunnels, patching systems with bare hands, and calculating solutions within seconds. Now, looking at the restored calm of the ship, they finally understood the magnitude of what they had accomplished. The communication specialists spent the aftermath analyzing recorded transmissions from both the Deathworlders and the Liari. The fragments of language they had decoded were invaluable for building future understanding. They discussed how the Liari had communicated fear, hope, and determination even in the darkest moments. They also studied the Deathworlders' patterns, searching for insights that might help humanity prepare for potential future encounters. The realization that humans were not the most powerful species in the galaxy was a difficult truth to accept, but it was better to know the reality than live in ignorance. Knowledge could be used to protect, prevent, and build alliances where possible. The communication team felt that this mission had opened a door to understanding the larger universe, even if what they saw on the other side was frightening. As the crew reflected, so did the Liari. Their elders gathered in the temporary safe zones the humans had directed them toward. They held quiet rituals, humming soft melodies that resonated through the air, creating a sense of calm after chaos. They mourned the loss of those who had not survived, honored the bravery of those who had helped others, and expressed gratitude for the unexpected arrival of the humans. Even though the Liari did not yet fully understand who the humans were or where they came from, they recognized them as protectors during their darkest hour. One of the most profound reflections came when the humans finally established a direct, visual communication link with the Liari for the first time. The moment the screens flickered to life and the two species saw each other clearly, there was a silence that felt almost sacred. The Liari, with their shimmering skin and fluid movements, gazed at the humans with curiosity and warmth. The humans, though tired and injured, returned the gaze with respect and compassion. The connection between them, though fragile, was genuine. It was a moment that not only symbolized survival but hinted at the possibility of future friendship. Captain Mendez spoke gently to the Liari, choosing simple words and calm tones even though the translation was imperfect. She told them they were safe for now. She explained that humanity would continue to watch over the situation, gather information, and support them in rebuilding their society as much as possible. The Liari responded with gestures of gratitudes, low waves of their arms, glowing patterns on their skin, and musical notes that conveyed trust. It was a moment that brought tears to the eyes of many crew members. Despite the emotional healing taking place, the aftermath also forced the humans to acknowledge the long-term implications of what they had witnessed. The Deathworlders were not finished. Their power and cruelty were undeniable, and the humans knew they could return. The crew discussed potential strategies, future missions, and ways to protect both the Liari and themselves. They sent encrypted reports to Earth, detailing everything they had seen. The information was shocking, disturbing, and urgent. Humanity would have to prepare for challenges unlike any they had ever imagined. Still, the humans also recognized something important. They had made a difference. They had saved lives. They had shown that strength could be used for compassion, not domination. They had demonstrated that, even in the darkest situations, courage and empathy could shine brightly. This realization helped the crew heal emotionally. They did not have all the answers, but they had acted with honor, and that meant something. As days passed, the horizon transformed from a battlefield into a place of recovery. Repairs continued. Liari civilians were stabilized. Crew members rested and regained their strength. The ship's atmosphere slowly shifted from raw tension to quiet resilience. People laughed again, though softly. They shared warm meals, told stories, and began to look forward rather than backward. Bonds between crew members deepened, forged through shared fear and survival. In the quiet moments, many crew members thought about how the mission had changed them personally. Some realized they had more courage than they ever believed. Others discovered their limits but also their ability to push beyond them when necessary. Some found new respect for alien cultures, understanding that life in all its forms was precious and deserving of care, and many felt humbled by the vastness and unpredictability of the universe. Captain Mendez spent last evening before the horizon prepared to depart, sitting once more at the observation deck. She gazed at the Liari planet, now more peaceful, and allowed herself to breathe deeply for the first time in weeks. She thought about the lives saved, the battles fought, the fear endured, and the unity that had emerged. She also thought about the future. This mission was only the beginning. Humanity would need to prepare, learn, and grow. The galaxy was larger and more dangerous than they ever imagined, but it was also filled with opportunities to do good, to protect, to connect, to understand. When she finally stood up to leave, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The mission had changed her, just as it had changed every member of her crew. They had endured something extraordinary together, something few humans had ever faced, and despite everything they had stayed true to their values. That, she believed, was what would guide them through whatever challenges came next. The aftermath of the mission was not a perfect ending, but it was meaningful. It was a moment of healing, reflection, and growth. that humans had helped a civilization in need, learned the strength of their own unity, and discovered both the beauty and danger of the universe beyond their own world. It was a chapter that would be remembered not only by the humans who lived through it, but also by the Liari whose lives were forever changed, and in the quiet of space, as the Horizon prepared to continue its journey. The story of this encounter became more than a mission report. It became a symbol of hope, courage, and the belief that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, someone would choose to help rather than harm.